The Hall of Constellations had never been this quiet. For 3,000 cycles, the chamber had echoed with the confident steps of admirals, the arguments of senators, and the measured voice of Empress Veloria herself. Its ceiling, an impossible dome of living crystal, usually shimmered with star maps and shifting nebulae, a reminder that the Aurelian Empire ruled 1,000 systems. Today, the stars were dimmed. The banners hung motionless. Even the air felt hesitant, as if afraid to disturb what was about to happen. At the center of the hall stood the Empress, ruler of the most powerful civilization in the known galaxy. And she was crying. Veloria of House Aurelius was not a being anyone had ever seen weep. She was tall, luminous, her skin carrying the faint gold sheen of her species, her eyes like polished obsidian reflecting entire starfields. She had commanded fleets into supernova storms. She had negotiated peace between species that had been at war for millennia. She had ordered worlds evacuated and, when there was no choice, ordered worlds burned. But now her shoulders trembled. Before her, on a levitating dais, lay a small, fragile figure wrapped in stasis light, her daughter, Princess Caroline. The child's eyes were closed, her breathing shallow. Strange, dark veins like cracks in glass spread beneath her translucent skin, pulsing faintly with a sick, violet glow. The imperial physicians stood in a silent line behind the Empress, some of the greatest minds in the galaxy, unable to meet her gaze. "We have tried everything," High Medica Threk said at last, his voice brittle. Nanite reconstruction, temporal rollback, quantum soul mapping. The curse is not biological. It is not energetic. It is woven into her existence. A curse? Veloria whispered. In an age where we bend stars. Threx lowered his head. Whatever it is, your radiance, it predates our science. It behaves more like a story than a disease. A rule written into reality. The Empress clenched her fists. Then rewrite the rule. We cannot, another physician said softly. If it completes its cycle, she will fade. Not die. Be erased. As if she was never born. That was when Veloria broke. The rulers, the admirals, the diplomats, they all watched their Empress sink to her knees beside the dais, pressing her glowing forehead against the stasis field. Her voice echoed through the vast chamber, raw and unguarded. My daughter is cursed, she wept, and all my power cannot save her. The words spread across the empire within hours. Most heard them with shock, some with fear, a few with quiet, dangerous hope, and one human heard them with tired eyes and a cracked mug of bitter coffee in his hand. Elias Ward was not supposed to matter. On the edge of Aurelian space, on a station that smelled permanently of coolant and old metal, he ran a small repair shop that fixed things most species preferred to throw away. Human tech was considered crude by galactic standards, inelegant, noisy, inefficient. But it had one advantage. It was stubborn. It kept working long after logic said it should stop. Elias was much the same. He had gray in his beard despite not being old by human standards, and a left knee that ached whenever the station's gravity fluctuated. His shop was cluttered with half-disassembled drones, broken translators, and a coffee machine that absolutely refused to die. When the broadcast came through, pirated, compressed, and looping, he almost ignored it. The image of the Empress kneeling, crying, burned itself into the small hollow projector on his counter. The translator struggled with her words, but the meaning was clear enough. My daughter is cursed. Elias stared at it longer than he meant to. A memory stirred, of a hospital room on Earth, of machines that beeped too slowly, of a doctor who wouldn't meet his eyes, of a little girl who liked drawing stars even though she had never seen them without smog in the sky. He shut off the projector. Not my problem, he muttered. Then he turned it back on. Because there was something else in the medical reports that had leaked with the broadcast, something most people glossed over. The physician said the curse behaved like a story, a rule written into reality. Elias had spent a lifetime fixing systems that were never meant to work together. Human ships cobbled from alien parts. Alien tech running on human logic. He knew one thing better than most. Rules were only absolute until you found where they conflicted. He locked up his shop that night. 3 days later, a battered human freighter filed a flight plan straight toward the heart of the Aurelian Empire. No one laughed when Elias asked for an audience with the Empress. They did something worse. They stared. He stood in a chamber that made his entire station look like a storage closet, flanked by guards who could probably lift his ship with one hand. Senators whispered. Scientists frowned. A few nobles looked offended that a human, was standing on that floor. I heard your call, Elias said simply. About your daughter. Vealoria sat on her throne, composed again, regal and distant. But her eyes flicked, just once, toward the sealed chamber behind her where Saraline lay. You are a mechanic, she said. Not a physician. Not a sorcerer. Not a reality engineer. No, ma'am, Elias replied. I'm a fixer. A ripple of quiet amusement moved through the court. The Empress did not smile. My best minds have failed, she said. Why should I listen to you? Elias took a breath. Because you're trying to cure a curse like it's a machine problem. And it's not. It's a systems problem. And systems I can work with. Threx, the High Medica, stepped forward. We have mapped her on every possible level. There is no point of intervention. Then you're looking at it wrong, Elias said. You said it yourself. It's like a story. Stories have rules, but they also have loopholes. The word echoed strangely in the vast hall. Give me access to her, Elias said. If I'm wrong, you lose nothing. If I'm right, you get your daughter back. Silence stretched. Finally, Vealoria stood. Take him to her, she said. Saraline lay in a chamber of soft light and silent machines. Up close, the curse was more unsettling. The violet lines under her skin shifted when Elias moved, like they were aware of being observed. He didn't touch her. He didn't even step close at first. He walked around the chamber, looking at the instruments, the energy readings, the probability fields projected in shimmering layers. Yeah, he murmured. This is a mess. Threx bristled. We have devoted entire civilizations' worth of knowledge to this. I'm not saying you're dumb, Elias said. I'm saying you're too neat. He pulled out a small, battered tablet, human-made, ugly, and patched together, and began overlaying the Aurelian data with his own rough models. The curse isn't attacking her body, he said slowly. It's enforcing a narrative condition. Something like, the princess must fade. You're trying to delete the sentence. But the story keeps rewriting it. Vealoria's voice was tight. Then how do we change it? You don't delete it, Elias said. You add a contradiction. They all looked at him. In human engineering, he continued, sometimes you can't remove a fault. So you introduce another system that requires the fault not to happen. Two rules that can't both be true. The system locks. Finds a new stable state. Threx's eyes widened slightly. You proposed a paradox? Not exactly, Elias said. A dependency. The curse says, she must fade. So we write something deeper that says, if she fades, something worse happens. The universe hates that. It'll pick the path with less damage. And what would be worse? Vealoria asked quietly. Elias looked at the sleeping child. Me, he said. They argued for hours. You don't just plug a human into an imperial princess like a spare part. There were laws, ethics. entire philosophies built around the sanctity of individual existence. Elias listened to all of it, then shrugged. "I'm not offering a theory," he said. "I'm offering myself." The plan was dangerous, untested, and by Aurelian standards, borderline barbaric. Elias would be linked to Caroline through a deep quantum identity tether. Not just a medical link. A narrative one. Their fates, partially entangled. If the curse tried to erase her, it would have to erase him too. And Elias Ward, human, stubborn, inconvenient Elias Ward, was not part of whatever ancient rule had written that curse. He was an error. A foreign object in the story. "You could die," Vealoria said. "Yeah," Elias replied. "Happens a lot to humans." He didn't say the other part, that he had already lived through losing a child once, and this felt like a chance to argue with the universe about it. The ritual, if you could call a fusion of quantum tech and reality engineering a ritual, took place in a sealed chamber. Light folded in on itself. Machines hummed in tones Elias could feel in his bones. For a moment, he felt like he was falling through memories that weren't his. Stars. Palaces. A small hand reaching for something glowing. Then pain. Sharp, bright, and shared. He screamed. Somewhere far away. So did Caroline. The violet lines flared. Then hesitated. The machines went wild. Probability field spiked. Alarm screamed. And slowly, impossibly, the glow began to fade. Elias woke up on a bed that was far too comfortable. His head felt like it had been used as a landing pad for a shuttle. His chest burned, not physically, but in a way he couldn't quite describe, like a pulled muscle in himself. Threx was there. So was Vealoria. And Caroline. She was sitting up. Her skin was clear. The curse was gone. For a second, Elias just stared. Then the little princess looked at him with enormous, curious eyes and said, "You're loud." He laughed, and then immediately regretted it because it hurt. "It worked," Threx said, awe and disbelief tangled in his voice. The curse collapsed. The narrative found a new stable outcome. Vealoria stepped forward slowly, like she was afraid this was a dream that might break. She knelt in front of Elias. Knelt, the empress of 1,000 worlds, and pressed her forehead to the side of his bed. "You saved her," she said. "You saved my daughter." Elias swallowed. "She saved herself. I just got in the way." But the story wasn't over. The tether didn't vanish. They discovered that within days, Elias could feel when Caroline was scared. Caroline could tell when Elias was lying. Their lives weren't fully merged, but they were threaded. A side effect, Threx explained. Or maybe the real price. "You are now part of her story," Vealoria said. "And she of yours." The court offered Elias anything. Titles. Wealth. A planet if he wanted it. He asked for a small workshop and permission to leave when he felt like it. Caroline visited him often, asking strange, wonderful questions about humans, about broken machines, about why his coffee tasted so bad. Months passed. The Empire went back to being loud and busy and powerful. And one day, Elias realized something else had changed. He wasn't waiting to leave anymore. Years later, when historians tried to explain how the Aurelian Empire began its long, strange friendship with humanity, they would talk about treaties and trade and shared technologies. But the real beginning was simpler. It was the day an empress wept and admitted she was powerless. And one human, broken in his own quiet way, answered, not with certainty, not with perfection, but with the most dangerous thing he had to offer, a refusal to accept the story as it was written. The celebration did not last. 3 days after Caroline woke, the first anomaly appeared. It was small at first, just a flicker in the probability fields that monitored the capital world. The kind of fluctuation that happened 1,000 times a day. But Threx noticed something unsettling about its shape. It wasn't random. It had structure, like a ripple spreading backward instead of outward. By the 5th day, the ripple had become a wave. "Your radiance," Threx said, his voice tight as crystal. "The curse is gone, but the system that created it is reacting." Veloria stood at the observation balcony, watching her daughter walk in the gardens below, laughing with 2 attendants as if she had never been dying. The sight still felt unreal. Precious. Fragile. Reacting how? The Empress asked. Threx brought up a holographic model of space-time itself. Layers of causality, probability, and narrative structure interwoven like threads of light. "Something ancient wrote that curse," he said. "Not a person. Not a species. A mechanism. A self-correcting structure embedded in reality in this region of the galaxy. You didn't just break one rule, your radiance. You forced the system into a contradiction." Elias, leaning against the wall with a cup of truly terrible palace coffee, squinted at the display. "So, it's throwing a tantrum." "In crude terms," Threx admitted, "yes." The model showed lines tightening, converging, pressure building around a single point. "That point," Threx said quietly, "is you, Elias Ward." Elias sighed. "Yeah. Figures." That night, the dream started. Not just for Elias. For Veloria. For Threx. For navigators across half the Empire. They dreamed of a vast, blind structure stretching between stars, not alive but not dead either, something like a machine made of rules. They dreamed of stories being written and erased, of destinies adjusted like faulty equations. And always at the center of the dream, there was a human-shaped absence. A gap. A mistake. Elias woke with his heart racing and Saraline sitting on the edge of his bed, her feet not quite reaching the floor. "It's coming, isn't it?" she asked. He didn't lie. Not to her. He couldn't. "Yeah," he said gently. "Something is." She was quiet for a long moment. Then she took his hand. "It doesn't like you." "Story of my life," he said, trying to smile. The first real sign came a week later, when a patrol ship simply vanished. No explosion. No debris. One moment it was there, the next it wasn't, erased so cleanly that even its gravitational imprint was gone. Then another. Then a station on the Empire's fringe lost an entire section of its history. People woke up to records that no longer matched their memories. Children no longer listed in family trees. Buildings that existed physically but had no construction data anywhere. The system wasn't attacking fleets. It was editing reality. "It's trying to restore consistency," Threx said. "You are an inconsistency, Elias. The tether made you part of the same narrative fault line as the princess. The system can't remove her anymore. So it's widening the correction." Veoloria's jaw tightened. "Then stop it." "We don't know how," Threx said. "We don't even know where it is. It exists distributed across space-time itself." Elias set his cup down. "You said it's a system. Systems have interfaces." Threx looked at him sharply. "You're thinking of going in." "Not physically," Elias said. "Conceptually. If this thing edits stories, then we talk to it in its own language." "And what language is that?" Veloria asked. Elias glanced toward the gardens, where Saraline was being ushered inside for safety. "Consequences." They built the anchor in orbit of the capital, a monstrous fusion of Aurelian reality tech and human brute force engineering. Elegant systems wrapped around stubborn, inelegant redundancies. It wasn't pretty. It was functional. The plan was terrifyingly simple. Elias would use the tether to act as a reference point, an intentional contradiction the system couldn't ignore. The anchor would amplify that paradox into something like a signal flare in narrative space. If the system responded, it would have to do so there. And if it tries to erase you? Valoria asked quietly. Elias met her eyes. Then it finally notices it can't, without breaking everything. Caroline hugged him before he left. Hard. Don't let it win, she said. I'm human, he replied. We're terrible at letting things win. When the anchor activated, the stars themselves seemed to hesitate. Space twisted, not visually, not in any way a camera could capture, but in meaning. Distances became suggestions. Causality grew thin. Elias felt pressure in his chest, in his head, in places that didn't have names. And then something noticed him. There was no voice, no face, no presence in any biological sense. But the rules around him shifted, like a sentence being rewritten mid-word. Error. Inconsistency detected. The thought wasn't in words. It was in outcomes. Elias swallowed and did the only thing he knew how to do. He pushed back. He let the tether flare. Let the system see the impossible equation it had created. Princess must fade. Human must not exist in this narrative. Human and princess now share dependent outcomes. Removing one collapses the structure. Resolution required. Yeah, Elias muttered, sweat dripping into his eyes. Welcome to the problem. He fed something new into the anchor. Not code, not data, but a rule written the human way. Change the story instead of erasing the characters. The pressure spiked. For a horrifying second, Elias felt himself coming apart, not physically, but in probability. 1,000 versions of him flickered in and out, dying in a hospital on Earth, never leaving his station, never answering the Empress's call. He held on, not to his body, to his choice. Across the Empire, instruments went blind. Then slowly reality settled. The disappearances stopped. The historical gaps closed, not by deleting more, but by smoothing the contradictions into something new. Records updated. Causality reknit itself. The system didn't vanish. It changed. It rewrote its own rule. Elias woke up in the same too comfortable bed as before. Valoria was there. Threx. And Caroline, trying very hard not to look like she'd been crying. Well, Elias said hoarsely, either I'm dead or this worked. Threx laughed shakily. It worked. The correction structure has adapted. It no longer enforces single outcome narratives. It allows variance. Free will. Elias guessed. In a sense, Threx said, you taught a machine made of destiny that stories can change. Valoria took Elias's hand, carefully, like he might vanish if she held too tightly. You could have been erased, she said. The Empire owes you more than it can ever repay. Elias looked at Caroline. She looked alive. Fully. Solidly. Herself. I didn't do it for the Empire, he said. Epilogue. The human error. Years later, Caroline would stand before the Hall of Constellations as a young woman, not yet Empress, but already carrying herself like one. Beside her would stand Elias Ward, officially titled Imperial Systems Consultant, unofficially known as the Human Error, the man who broke destiny and taught an ancient machine to accept change. Humanity and the Aurelian Empire would grow closer, not because of treaties alone, but because one stubborn human had proven something the galaxy had forgotten. That no story, no matter how powerful, was beyond rewriting. And sometimes, the smallest, most unlikely character was exactly what the universe needed, to learn how to hope again.